Welcome to Charmed Life, a radio show discussing spirituality, magic, and the unconditional love of the universe. Thanks for tuning in. And I'm your host, Tricia Carr. Thank you so much for joining us this beautiful, I think it's about a fall kind of morning, actually. We are broadcasting live from the Universal Broadcasting Studios, Universal Broadcasting Network Studios in Hollywood, California. And it is getting close to that time of year that is the betwixt and the between time. And so I'm really excited to have in studio the queen of betwixt and between, in my opinion, Laura Powers.
Thank you. What a lovely introduction. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So it is actually, September 17th. We're a little more than 6 weeks from Halloween.
Yes.
So everyone should check out Laura's book that she published last year, right?
Yeah, it was around last year, around Halloween time, called Supernatural Survival Guide, which is all about this kind of stuff, the supernatural and everything that everybody likes during Halloween.
Yes. There's a reason why we go and we visit it, you know, there's something, but I think it's always bringing us back into the light if we look at it with our hearts. Yes?
Oh, yeah. I feel like it's showing what's hidden and bringing it to light, basically.
Yes.
It's showing what is often not shown so that we can kind of address it and integrate it. So, yeah, I love this time of year.
I do too.
It also gives us an opportunity to talk about stuff that a lot of times is kind of like not allowed to talk about, which I think is great.
It's like when I don't know if you've ever gone hiking with friends, and the tendency when you're hiking together uphill, the conversation tends to be about challenges. And then suddenly when you're going downhill, like if you guys pay attention to this, if you go hiking with friends, and then when you're going downhill, all of a sudden you're talking about like the ease and like the cool stuff that's just happening so easily.
Oh, fun.
And so the seasons are doing that because there is at the end of the warm season where things were, you know, bursting with life and being at their peak, then it starts to take the slow energy of dematerialization so that it can feed Gaia and then transmute and become anew again.
Yeah, and the other thing about the seasons that I love this time of year is that it's a time of kind of looking inwards again, because the summer is so external and being outside and socializing with people, but then things get more quiet and we start to slow down. But I think that's a great time to address ourselves and like what's really going on at a deeper level too.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of transitions and some inner introspection, I guess, we actually wanted to talk about a topic that is, it's a little heavier. Yes.
It can be. Yeah.
Well, we're talking about loss and grief, and what do you want to share? What inspired some of this topic today, Laura?
Yeah. So not that long ago, a friend of mine who was quite young passed away rather unexpectedly, and so this just brought this to the surface for me. This issue of grieving someone, the loss of someone, and also how you can be spiritual and understand on a conscious level the sort of light aspect of it, that this is for the highest good, whatever happened, but that doesn't take away the sadness or the grieving that you have for the situation. And I also I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but I wanted to bring up how there's lots of different types of grief. So there's the obvious one is when you lose somebody that you love who passes, but there's also grieving future that you thought you had that you know realized you didn't, grieving the identity of yourself that you thought you had, or even that you thought someone else had. So like, let's say someone's sort of true colors come out and you can grieve, you know, the loss of who you thought they were. So there's a lot of grieving right now happening, especially as it relates to all the different natural disasters that have been happening. And so I think both on the micro and the macro, there's a lot of processing of grief happening. And if you're an empath, even if you weren't directly affected by, say, the floods or the fires or whatever, you are still feeling that deeply. On a level.
Actually, I am my guides are telling me, hey, remember what we were talking about in your sleep last night? We'll talk about that right now.
Oh, great.
That this, you know, you dabble in numerology and know a little bit about it. Do you know what the date is today? It's 9/17. that reduces to, that's 2 9s.
Right.
Right?
And it's
7 plus 8.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So all the 9s are...
And it's 9, 17, 17. So
yes.
it's 2 17s.
Right. 7, wait, that's 8. That's 8 and 8. Oh, anyway. They were telling me about the 9s and the full numbers of this particular day. 9 is a number about basically this, about transition and change. And 8 is... 8 is about abundance. 8 is kind almost like
reaping.
But yes.
You're getting close to the end.
Yes, it's a very full number. 9 is the number that holds all numbers. Mm-hmm. And it's basically all the way to that full side of the spectrum of basically changing, transitioning, transforming, transmuting, all of the trans stuff. Yes. And but yes, actually, if you don't mind, I want to talk about, since you mentioned empaths, because I am offering an empath program right now, Empowered Empaths and Highly Sensitive Intuitives, and it starts on Tuesday, so I want to make sure that folks do hear about this. It's a 6-week intensive group coaching, and since it's the first time I'm doing this, I have it at a really, really inexpensive rate, and even deeper discount if you join the online spiritual community, of which I am a teacher and a mentor, and that is the Lightworkers Lab. You guys listen to my show, then you hear me talk about the Lightworkers Lab. It's hosted on Facebook, so you can find it by going to facebook.com/groups/the Lightworkers Lab, I think something like that, or just, search for the Lightworkers Lab group in Facebook. If you join there, then you can actually get an even deeper, lower cost on that program. And otherwise, if you want to join this program by my website, triciacarcharm.com/empath. You can read all about it. It's going to be amazing. I believe that coming into your power with your empathic nature is, I just think it's so fundamental to be doing any kind of the work that you came here to do, whether you are in the the community of wanting to do it professionally or not. If you are just a sensitive, compassionate person, if you do feel that suffering that Laura's talking about by witnessing world events, or by your family or your friends or people coming to you all the time with their issues, right. You're having feelings that you don't know if they're your own or not. You have love deep down in your heart, but sometimes it's like this shroud of suffering on you. Then I highly encourage you to check out this program. This is actually how the portal for me to coming into my spiritual power and strength and uncovering all these gifts was actually this wonderful person right here. I booked a 15-minute phone call with her, never had a psychic reading in my entire life, and the first thing she told me was I was an empath, and my world cracked open.
It's like you have to, again, it's like a completely different version of the reality and your identity, and it's so important to understand it. And I'm so glad that you
me too
have access, and it's been amazing to watch your transformation after that.
Yeah. Well, Laura, it was actually December 27th, 2015.
Gosh, I was just thinking about that because I
2014. Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
But as I flew into town for meetings and clients and such this weekend and this radio show, that how quickly things have shifted, and once you tap into your gifts and understand that happens, it tends to bring about very rapid fire, but positive change in your life. And so where you can look back a year, 2 years, 3 years and be like, wow, I can't believe how far, I've come, or
it's shocking,
or whatever.
It really is shocking because I'm hanging with people like you. I'm hanging with some other, my colleague Crystal Ann Compton. You've been uncovering and working in and looking at your life and the world and the universe this way for years and years and years. I mean, the truth is, even before I opened up that last piece, of course, I was in consciousness study. Of course, I had a deep spiritual growth and all that kind of stuff going on. But that last piece, I wasn't open to anything metaphysical before that. I wasn't. Yeah. It was crazy. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. So
I just, if it's okay, please. I want to interject that we were just talking about this before we started the show today, the importance of getting training and going to different teachers because, everyone has a different perspective and they have different knowledge, different perspective. And it's wonderful to go and get what you can from different teachers. So just want to share that because sometimes people will tap in and they'll just kind of go through one source. And I think that can be beneficial to a degree, but I think there's so much to be said for, getting a broad perspective and learning from various people.
Definitely. Various systems, various people. I completely agree. I come from the Christian church, and I love science, love taking inspiration from science. I don't really know very many other religions, but every now and again nuggets come through.
Sure.
And I guess it hasn't been an interest for me to like really study other religions that deeply.
Yeah.
But yes, there's value. There's God in everything. And it's just you follow your heart.
Yeah.
And there are infinite perspectives. So it makes sense that we keep working with other teachers and other resources.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so check out Laura's work. Are you doing any teaching or coaching or anything like that?
I've been so busy with some other things. I may do a little bit later this fall. I may do a group class. And right now I'm focusing just on like one-on-ones and private classes, which I love. Yeah. And then doing writing and TV work and, all that other kind of stuff that I enjoy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Great. Okay. Well, let's see. So like you said, let's start with the obvious one, the grieving of someone, of the physical loss of someone. I know a lot of us are experiencing that in many different ways.
Yeah. So one of the big things I want to address is that it is okay to grieve and it's natural. And I think sometimes in spiritual circles, this idea that, don't have dark emotions or don't, you want to do the law of attraction and you want to attract good things. So don't be, in fear and pain and sadness. But the truth is that these emotions are not bad or even dark, as in certain contexts as they've been labeled, and that we have to process and experience things through physical experience. Yes. And our bodies are kind of the most dense in terms of matter and energy compared to like our spirit, which is very light. And when we're releasing or processing an emotion, a lot of times we have to experience it on a physical level while it's releasing. And this is really important. So if you say, you're like, oh, this is an unpleasant emotion, I don't like this, I'm just going to kind of deny or shove it in. But the truth is it's still there, right? So what happens is people kind of just shove this all in, and in a way they may feel like it's gone away, but it's not. It's actually still inside. And in the bigger picture, it's so much healthier, and you will feel lighter ultimately if you allow it to express itself and release. So you may have days of crying and or weeks, depending on the severity of whatever it is that you're processing, and that's okay. That we need to not judge that. And also, especially for an empath, there may be something that on a conscious kind of logical level you're like, why am I so sad? I shouldn't quote unquote be this sad. And so then you're not acknowledging it. Like, same thing, shoving it down. It's so important to just, if you're feeling that, just allow it to express itself.
Because shoving it down, it's going to keep showing up.
Exactly.
It's going to keep asking for light. It's going to keep asking for your attention.
And if it's a situation where you're like, I don't know why this is coming up, maybe as an empath, you've absorbed something.
Sure.
But at the same time, it needs to be, again, released and expressed. So whether it's coming from you, from something you've shoved down, or something that's just been triggered, or something you've taken in, it is important to allow it to express itself and then release it that way so that you can move forward in a lighter, less intense way.
Right. And another thing that I think that particularly sensitive people have maybe get a hitch about processing their feelings, their sadness, is like giving themselves permission to this, comparing yourself to others. Well, I've just lost this and other people are experiencing something else, or however you frame that. But that tends to, or even just the thinking that if you take the space and the time to experience that you're taking yourself out of the world and out of responsibilities, but it is actually your responsibility to tend to that above other things even.
Right. And the other aspect of this is that you may be releasing or processing things that you don't even understand on a conscious level. So an example that comes to mind is, let's say that something is triggering some past life stuff. So maybe you're connecting with someone that you've had some past lives with, or connecting with a theme that's come up in past lives. And on a conscious level, you're like, why am I so sad about this? Or why am I so angry or frustrated? And it may be that this is bringing up some stuff that you don't even kind of consciously remember in this life, but that doesn't mean that it's not there, or that it's not real or valid. Exactly. So this has happened a lot for me now, where I connect with people from past lives, and what happens is the pattern of your interaction with a person will strengthen or lessen depending on where you are in the lesson. But this is a really fun example recently, where I was on my way to a hair appointment, and this armored car driver stopped in front of me, and he was already stopped, and he didn't have his flashers or anything on. So I thought he was just waiting at the light, and then turned out it wasn't. And I got so angry with him. And it was like, why am I so angry? Like, this is it should be no big deal. I'll just like wait for the light to turn, and then I'll go around him. And then I got to look at past lives, and there was a life in which he was like a soldier, and there was a Roman army that was crossing the road where I was trying to cross. And he kept me there for 3 hours.
Oh, no.
And so I was really angry about that other life. And it was like, you again. So that's an example. And that one's kind of a funny one, but it may be something that's very sad or intense, where, maybe someone doesn't treat you well in a relationship, or they don't call you back, or whatever, and you just are deeply triggered, and it could be something like that.
Right. That's a good point. And what's interesting about you recognized it as being a past life kind of memory, and it doesn't mean that it's not valid. It is it triggered something that was a little bigger than the situation, but it's still something that maybe wanted attention, just that emotion,
right? And it needed to be released. I was so that old frustration was not serving me,
right? And so if you guys are thinking like, but I don't know how to look at my past life stuff. Well, first of all, I'll just let your your imagination. I say quotes because your imagination actually is your spiritual tool. Absolutely. So just let it open up, and whatever images, thoughts, emotions, come to mind, that's it. That's it. That's as simple as it is. You don't have to like regress into deep, deep trances and by someone else and pay them thousands of dollars. You can do that, and that's awesome. Those are awesome experiences. But that's how simple it is. What Laura is talking about, right? You reviewed it while you were standing there on the
absolutely.
corner.
If you want to learn more about that, I do teach training on it, or you can read about it in some of my books. But essentially, I always recommend invoking angels or your spirit guides, whoever you work with. I work a lot with Archangel Michael to help show you what's true and accurate. And then, see what impressions you get. And if you're clairvoyant, you may get visual impressions or see images in your quote unquote imagination, as you said, or you may just know, you may have a deep knowing of, a situation that had arisen in the past. And it's so much of tapping into your intuition and psychic abilities is just learning to trust that and not doubt what's coming forward.
That subtlety, that little subtle area of just trusting it. And if you're not quite there, even so, like just you recognize, so Laura was getting sort of triggered and feeling this from basically outside. It's almost like really it is kind of like your empathic nature as well. Like you were experiencing from the outside, from another event, and you were same thing like with your empathic nature. If you're picking something up as an empath or a highly sensitive person outside of you, you're picking up that thing because that emotion that's true in you wants attention.
Right. Like it could be you perceive that person is doing something, which is bring that up. But really, if there has to be at least a bit of it in you, it wouldn't even be triggered, Right.
Because every emotion is available. Every you know what I mean? Like everything is available, and you can pick that up. It was something we talked about a couple shows ago. But what's great about recognizing whether, like for you, it was a past life that you're reviewing, or it's externally, I'm picking this up from the person that's standing next to me who's angry. Again, you have anger that that has attracted it, right, and wants attention. Now, it's good to separate it and be like, okay, how angry I am is because of that. So there's a lesser degree that wants attention. How angry I am because I picked it up from this past life or from this person that's near me or something like that. That is theirs, and that belongs to those situations or that person. But I have a reality here that I need to actually release that so I can look at the more subtle reality of my own.
Absolutely. And once you release and address the pattern, so in my case it was in both situations, I had allowed myself less time, like meaning in my past life situation as well as this life, to get to where I needed. Then was like, it was, if there were no problems, it was enough time, but I hadn't allowed any extra time, you know? So in that life, it was a big problem for me because it was really late and I had a group of people with me and it was nightfall, you know. In this case, I was a few minutes behind my hair appointment. Yeah, like,
that's okay.
No big deal.
We all made it.
Yeah, exactly. But so there's always a lesson that's coming up and being shown to you as well.
Yeah.
Also, just want to address in terms of this intuitive work, looking at past lives, et cetera, that it's a learning process. So, I mean, like now I can literally be like, oh, what's this past life? And it'll just pop in my head. And then literally in like 30 seconds, I can kind of be like, okay, you know, but that wasn't always the case. You know, you learn how to do it faster. So, but that said, with practice, you can look at these things like very, very quickly.
Right. So let's see. So we were talking about the physical loss.
Yes.
And yes, I completely agree that sometimes the other thing that can happen in spiritual communities is, but we're eternal. I shouldn't be, it's not very spiritual of me to be grieving the physical loss of someone because they're eternal. No, it's very spiritual for you to do
Absolutely.
that because being physical is very spiritual.
Yeah. And it's, you know, when someone passes, it brings up, loss in terms of like physically you no longer are connecting with that person in the physical realm. Even if you can connect with them as a spirit, you're not connecting physically anymore. For me, it brought up the sadness of, you know, what she would no longer have, you know,
the loss of her potential.
Yes, exactly. Especially when someone is young, that is very challenging. And then of course, as an empath, there were several people that I then had, you know, who didn't know that she had passed. So then who I had connected with her and telling them, so then processing and feeling their sadness too, you know, so there's a lot wrapped up in it. And we may not even understand all of it on a conscious, logical level, but it's important to honor it if it's there.
The feelings, And we don't always have to define into words and make it so linear, the feelings, just attention. Yeah. And having compassion for yourself.
Yeah, I think just letting yourself cry, letting yourself feel sad, if that's what is needed at the time. Right.
And this... What's interesting is at the same time, a couple of things have come up for me. If my friend Tomek is watching, I love you. And Tomek, 3 days ago, I think it was, he texted me because I had some physical issues last week, like really bad in my stomach. And I didn't even tell my friend Tomek. I just said that, you know, we were going to connect on something. And I said, well, I'll have to do it later. I'm not well. And he said, he's very intuitive. He said, well, it's coming up for me that there's some kind of sadness or loss or grief. I can't remember if he used the word loss or grief, but he said sadness, and one of those words that wants attention. And isn't that interesting? And Laura and I hadn't even talked about this yet. It was before you and I had talked about coming on the show, before I knew about your friend.
So, and this friend, I had connected with Tricia, and Tricia had read for her. And so this is exactly the type of situation I'm talking about, where you may be processing grief before you even consciously know what's happening, but that doesn't mean that it's not legitimate. Right. That is interesting.
And I think it was the day, like we connected on that very late that evening, and I think I connected with my friend Tomek, where he gave me that message earlier in that same day. I'd have to look at the
so
text.
He was like feeling it coming.
Yep. Well, in addition to that was I was dealing with some grief. So this is something along the lines of feeling like you have permission to experience loss because it isn't a big one. You know, it's not important. It's not an important loss.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
That's why when Princess died, and I swear, like the world grieved. I mean, that doesn't mean that everybody knew her personally, but that doesn't matter.
I felt that way about Lucille Ball too. I was in high school at the time, and I went to school bawling. And I remember a friend being like, "What's wrong with you? You didn't know her. You know, like she didn't get it."
Yeah, and also that you may have a soul connection with a person, even if you don't know them physically in this life. So it's important to remember that a lot of people are connected on a soul level. They may not have connected, in this incarnation.
Well, and not to mention the fact that I grew up with Lucille Ball, and I watched her. I watched every single bit of, show and comedy that she put out. So I did know her.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is that before that day when my friend had intuited that, and before I learned about your friend, our friend, I also, last week, my kitty Franzi actually had to have dental surgery, and he had to have most of his teeth removed. And when the doctor told me that, like a few days before, I actually felt an intense loss. I'm trying not to get emotional right now, actually, but that's hard. Like my Franzi losing most of his teeth. And I understand, I knew he was going to be fine. I understand that they don't have as much, reaction to something that dramatic happening as we do, because we think about the identity of it and everything, but they do. And they still do. And for cats in particular, they have a hard time. Like if we lost all of our teeth, we would just, like, the identity of it would be, like devastating for humans.
Yeah, absolutely. Like a lot of women have nightmares of that.
Right?
Very thing.
Yeah. For cats, they actually almost have that. They would have that same response if they lost their fangs, because that is they are physically, they're dependent upon those because they're presentational, and with their physical body, their primal nature needs that or really desires that. And I didn't know if that, because the doctor told me maybe all of his teeth, like that's what she told me, and he didn't lose any of his fangs, so glory be,
Yeah.
Thank God. But still, it was a big loss that I was processing, and then it's like there's so much, and then what's going on with the natural disasters,
right.
And I wish we had another word for that, because just the word disaster.
I know. But yeah, I agree. Because again, there is this later aspect to it, but yeah, it's whatever you call it, it's very challenging for those that are being directly impacted by it, as well as those who are not. So with there was the Mexican earthquake, a couple of major hurricanes, fires everywhere.
Right.
So, that's a lot that collectively everybody is processing.
Right. And so as we shift into probably another version of this, we'll take calls too. I feel like we have so much to get to talk about on this, but we do. Okay. We have some calls. Y'all hang on. We'll get to you in just a minute. I want to at least get through the part of the teaching about loss of self and versions of yourself.
Yeah.
About 3 weeks ago, I think it was. I don't remember if I shared this on this show or not. Jarvis, you'll have to tell me if I did or not. But I had a dream, and maybe I did. Jarvis, did I share the dream about me having to dispose of my own dead body?
Oh my goodness.
Spoiler alert. It was wild. So but it was more like, it was not just a dream. It was more like an astral projection. You know what I mean? It was really
like you've become a new person and now you have to deal with
well,
this.
but I had a body too. So it wasn't like I was spirit and I was seeing, that would have been easier. I was a body. I was Tricia, and then there was a full dead Tricia on a slab.
Right.
Warm and
appropriate for Halloween as well, I think.
Yeah. And I was like, and it was like very much like an astral projection, because I was with my guides and I was like, what's happening here? And also I was confused because I was like, there's two of me. One of me is dead and one of me is alive as a physical. And they explained to me that this is what it feels like when you are basically transforming into something else. There's a part of you, there's a version of you that you need to deeply grieve.
Yeah.
And bury and dispose of and be okay with it and feel. And they said, go ahead and cry and grieve like you've lost someone, because you have.
Yeah.
And they gave me my own physical body so I could like viscerally experience what it's like when we are becoming something new. And I woke up and I was like so heebie-jeebied. I was like, blah, blah, blah. It was so real. I wasn't scared. I was just creeped out, because being with any dead body is creepy.
But if it's your own, it's even a whole other level. Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. So there's a premonition for this show. I remembered walking in to the studio.
That is so wild. Yeah, I just, when our mutual friend passed and I reached out to Tricia, and it was just so strong, like, we should do a show about this. And now it like really makes sense. I think it's something that just so many people are dealing with. And you may be dealing with multiple losses or grieving it at the same time. So in my situation, when I left and divorced my ex-husband, I was grieving the loss of the relationship. I was grieving the loss of the person I thought he was.
Right.
I was grieving who I was and was no longer going to be able to be. And that was a lot of releasing to happen at the same time. And that was one of those times in my life where there would just be days when I just cried and cried and cried. Yeah. But it was strange because at the same time, so much of that I was releasing was very heavy and not good for me to hold on to. Like, it was definitely time to let all of that go. Right. So I was like, went through this emotional roller coaster of, being like almost like happy, and then like devastatingly sad. And so that may happen for you too, this extreme up and down. Mm-hmm. It can be part of the grieving process, even though you might not recognize it at the time.
Right. I want to acknowledge too, just in case I have a few friends who, in case they listen to the show, I have a few friends whose animals are also experiencing some changes. Mm-hmm. I have one friend whose cat has lost her sight. We're hoping that she's going to be getting back her sight, mm-hmm. that it is a temporary thing, but that's pretty dramatic. And I have clients actually that I spoke with them a few weeks ago in case they're listening, and they have a dog who shifted into a slower lifestyle because of some physical, I don't remember what the physical problems were at this time. I feel like maybe there was some heart issue. The dog isn't near the end of life necessarily. I mean, maybe in the twilight years or in the sunset years, but his the way I remember him saying, "I'm fine with it. You guys just understand it's been changing for a while and things are different. I'm not in pain, but I can't go on long walks. I can only go on short walks." And, they had to be with that. And just like you said, they had to mourn the fact that a way that their loved one is expressing themselves has changed, and it's different. And it's on the metaphysical or the energetic side, energy can neither be created or destroyed. So then the version of your ex-husband, right, had the one that you knew, the one you had created together in your marriage, had to continue, that energy had to change and basically process out and become something different. But that is a loss of the expression of that energy as you knew it.
Yeah, and I think this happens for a lot of people where it's not even the person as much that you're losing your sense of reality. Right. You can grieve a sense of a certain truth that you thought was the case or something. So in my case, there was so much that shifted from the loss of that relationship in terms of my perspective of the world, my perspective of relationships. And I think that was the hardest part of all. And that's hard because on a societal level, that's not as accepted or understood. Like if someone passes away, someone dies, we're like, oh yeah, you can be sad for that. Mm-hmm. But when there's this more, less concrete, less physical less kind defined, of death, then that's often not as understood or accepted. Right.
There's not space for it in our day-to-day. Right. I when my bird passed away years ago now, and I had to go to work the next day because no one could cover me. Mm-hmm. And I was, my face was on the floor, you know what I mean? And people walked in, and the customers I was working in a restaurant, the customers who knew me and who were just sensitive were like, "What's wrong?" And I could say, "Oh, my bird passed away." And there were some who were like, "Oh, yeah, you had to, oh, that's interesting. So are birds nice?" Some people, and then other ones were just like, "Oh my God, I am so sorry." Yeah. And, being able to hold that space with me but I felt like at that time, I felt like I didn't deserve to have my grief.
It's exactly what I'm talking about is where grief is either judged by others or ourselves. Mm-hmm. And it's important not to in either case. So, if someone's going through a lot of grief and maybe you just are going through stuff for yourself and you can't kind of handle it, it's okay to take a step back, and let that person process. But also not to judge it and not to judge it for ourselves as well. Right.
Because you think about if your friend, parent, or some human passes away, then it's Shalebird. That's who it is. Jarvis is putting a picture of Shalebird up real soon, here in a sec. My Shalebird, that's the one. But yeah, that the degrees of what's accepted or not, or generally understood by society, it doesn't matter. If it's your friend or your relative who passes away, well, there's easily space in society for you to grieve that.
Yeah.
If it's an animal, maybe less space. But inside the animal world, someone's dog passes away, people are like, yeah, man's best friend. I get that. But birds are less common. Some people don't realize you can have affectionate relationships with birds. And so there's even, but it doesn't matter what the outside perspective is. Right. Again, it's all about what you need and honoring that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Would you like to take a call now?
I'm sure.
Okay. Do we have? Okay, good. They hung out with us. Hi, you're on the air. Who's this? Hello? Hi there.
Hi. Hello?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Who is this?
This is Connie.
Hi, Connie. Where are you calling from?
Indiana.
Wonderful. So nice to meet you. And we have Laura Powers here with us as well.
Hello.
Hi, Laura.
What's going on with you today, Connie?
I am a widow. I lost my husband a few years ago, and I'm listening to what you're saying, and I mean, it's all very true, but the one thing I think that's happened to me is it's throwing me into and I just continue to live like this, like, when's the next shoe going to drop? It's just going to constantly going to happen. It's going to, and like last week, my daughter got some fairly bad news, and so now I'm sitting here thinking, okay, another shoe's going to drop. And it's like I just can't get out of this darkness.
I hear you. Well, something that I think loss brings up too is our ability to be present. It brings us, it brings us into the present when, and yet at the same time we're experiencing the past because of, what we did have. So when we're in that anxious place of when's the other shoe going to drop, it's good to try to, if you have a prayer practice or a meditation practice, to just connect with some I am safe now. In this moment I am well, and I am cared for by the universe, by Mother Earth, by God, whatever your paradigm is. Connie, do you have a practice along those lines where you pray or you meditate or spend some time?
Oh, I pray a lot.
I could feel that's
Yes.
what I knew the word prayer was right. Yes. So I enter into your deep prayer state and connect with the fact that in this moment, because this moment is where God is. So in this moment, I am well, I am safe. And then perhaps that connecting that way will help you to connect with the eternal nature of your husband's soul. And that actually, it's interesting how we connect with eternity and it brings us present. Mm-hmm. Would you say, Laura?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's important to process and release grief, but also not get so pulled into that we don't see the light and the beauty of the world as well. And I'm getting from my guides sharing that for you, it's important to do things that bring you light and joy. Yes. And get you kind of out of the sort of analytic part of your brain and perspective, and more into just experiencing life again. So whatever that is for you, dancing or going to see beautiful nature or art or, whatever brings you light and joy, and back into kind of, like Tricia said, the present moment, I'm getting would help you not get so focused on, kind of future calamities that are possible, but maybe not even going to happen.
I feel very much that your heart is still in the space of healing, but you could really bring some comfort and some healing energy to the heart by doing some physical activity that gets your heart rate up a little bit, because that breath, even if it's walking or walking vigorously, that breath is actually healing to the heart, and I mean the spiritual heart as well as the physical heart. And that will also help you just to release some of that anxiety. As we know, exercise helps us to release the depression and anxious, depressed and anxious kind of emotions and energy. Do you have some? Do you like to take walks in nature, Connie?
I love to. My husband and I used to love to play golf, but since he passed away, I have a very bad knee, and I need to have it replaced. And as soon as I retire, I'm going to do that.
I see.
And so I'm unable to do a whole lot of physical activity because of that, you know. But I like to sit on my deck, and I like to watch the birds and the dragonflies that fly around. And
nice.
And
I feel like your husband sends you dragonflies. Do you know that? Do you feel that?
I think he does. And Trish, this is really funny. I have to tell you this little story. Before, when you were talking, you used the word heebie-jeebie.
Uh-huh.
I think my husband is sitting right next to you because he used to use that word consistently.
You know what? I don't know if you noticed this.
Laughed at him.
I paused before I said it. Did you notice me pausing? I was like, "Is that a word to use on the show right now?" And I was like, "I'm okay." And did you notice it? I paused. I was like, "Okay, I'm saying this word, heebie-jeebies." I think you're right. Oh, how beautiful! I'm getting chills too. Oh, just showing you.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we kid him all the time. You can't say that; it's not a word.
That's so funny.
And to be honest with you, I have not heard it maybe one or two times since he passed away. So that is really, really strange.
And look at that, how he's lightening it up.
Yeah.
You know what? You should, if you could find some ways to laugh, that'll bring some of that air. And he wants to make you laugh right now by influencing me and just whispering in my ear, heebie-jeebie, or telling my guides to tell me whatever, however it works out. Yeah, telling you jokes.
That is exactly what I was getting. Is it's just so important to just find that joy and that light again for you, however you can. And it's so great that he stepped in here to.
That's beautiful. That. Well, some laughter. If you could find some ways to laugh, maybe even going to comedy shows or watching comedy on Netflix or something. And then, of course, there are certain kinds of breathing practices where breath of fire, I know, is one. How the name of one where you are bringing in a lot of breath, and that would be very healing to the heart, the spiritual heart, and also good for obviously the cardiovascular. Since you can't get mobile, but doing it outside on your deck with the dragonflies that your husband sends you, and if something crawls onto your foot, then he's giving you the heebie-jeebies for fun.
Hey, Laura, just one other thing? Can I ask you? Do you see anything from my daughter, one way or the other? Are you able to do that?
Well, one thing I'm getting is that in the bigger picture, things are going to be okay, and you're being guided to, shift your focus from worry and direct it into prayer for positive things for her, and also I know this is hard, but to let go of the outcome of that situation.
That's really hard.
But I'm getting that would be the best thing. But I'm getting overall this sense of that things are moving along in a good way, and things will be all right.
I see light on the other side of it as well. I see that it is a trial, and it's actually, I'm also getting, it's not as bad as you guys think it is, but it's okay to move through the depth of the feelings of not knowing how bad it is. Yeah. It's okay to experience those, but just to take it moment by moment, it's actually going to clear up. If you guys can continue to stay, just present and recognizing that we're just going through something and we're going to come out stronger on the other side, it actually will process faster than you at this moment have anxiety about, if that makes some sense to you. Does that feel good?
It does. It does, because I tell you, I'm happy to hear you say that, because for some reason deep down inside of me, I feel the same way.
Good. Just put your attention on that and be in that. Just relish that. You're allowed to feel that too. That isn't you abandoning your daughter and the challenge that there is. It's you holding the higher aspect. You're putting your attention on that greater outcome. That is actually the work that you can do in the light for the situation. Beautiful. Great.
And to trust yourself and the universe.
Yes. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies. I'm going to trust the heebie-jeebies.
Good.
You're welcome.
Thank you for calling, Connie. You're so beautiful.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right.
You too.
Well, we just have a few minutes left. Do we have time to have? I don't think so. No.
Yeah.
So I think, is there another aspect that we wanted to cover?
Well, I'm glad Connie called and brought this issue up of it is important to process and to grieve, but not to get trapped in it. So there may be days when you need to just cry, but then there may be times when it's like, wow, I processed this and I need to bring some of that lightness and joy back in. And again, it may be back and forth. It may not be like, oh, I'm done grieving and then now I'm going to enjoy. It can come in waves and that's okay. But just because you're processing grieving doesn't mean you can't also have joy concurrently or at a similar time. So it's also okay, not to judge yourself, and it's okay to have joy even if something devastating has happened to you.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
So there's another thing that happens where people can judge themselves or others like, well, I shouldn't have fun because I should be sad or I should, and that's also not healthy either.
Yes. It's like, I remember when I've lost someone and you have these confusing moments where you think, if I'm enjoying myself, it means I'm no longer missing them or something like that. Those confusing things come up. It's just natural. It's just what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe there's a time when we need to be around people that are light or watch a comedy or, whatever. And that's good. And that's great. And to go ahead and allow yourself to do that as well.
And I love that her husband is lightening the mood with the word heebie-jeebie and everything and saying, yes, it is good. It is okay. And and that's another way you can look at it if you're in loss and then you are experiencing some joy, that it is okay, that those who are either whether they're past or whether it's the thought forms that we have released, that
or even their higher self. Let's say someone hurt you, their higher self could still be loving towards you.
Absolutely. And want to engage in that joyous aspect with you. So then you can have a moment of that light aspect with the lighter aspects of whatever you're grieving, or who. Yeah, absolutely.
And if, let's say, you're crying and then you suddenly feel love and light, it could be just like in this case of Connie's husband, that spirit is visiting you and trying to say, hey, I'm okay. Right. And that's one of the challenging things as a psychic is I will feel that. I feel the sadness and then I feel their joy at the same time.
That's true. Yeah. we just feel all of it. We just feel.
Exactly.
Well, that is about it for our show today. Laura, please let everyone know how they can get in touch with you for your work.
Sure. Yeah. So my website is healingpowers.net. I have my own podcast, which Tricia has been a guest on many times. You can see how to work with me personally, watch videos and lots more there on that website, healingpowers.net.
Yes, thank you so much. And my website is triciacarcharm.com. I do one-on-one sessions with animals and people. I do intuitive sessions with humans. I do animal communication with people and their animals. And you can see the classes that I have coming up. Again, I have the Empowered Empath and Highly Sensitive Intuitive. Enrollment is open now and until the 25th, but class does start live this Tuesday, so you could catch up if you enroll just a little bit later. That's no problem. And my handles to find me on any social media are Tricia Carr Charm. And thank you so much for tuning into Charmed Life. I appreciate you all so much. And I will see you next week at 11 a.m. Pacific. You can find it on Facebook or at ubnradio.com, channel 1. Thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.